debate. Let's move on to gay marriage, another area. Another simple one.
Easy topics, that's right. It's one of my favourites.
Geraldine, why do you choose these topics?
Well, because there was quite a significant poll came out, actually. The majority of Australians now support gay marriage, according to the latest opinion poll, the Galaxy poll. But it seems there's a real gender divide. This new Galaxy survey found that 64% believed that same-sex couples should be allowed to wed, but only 58% of men supported changing the laws, compared with 70% of women. And the poll was commissioned by Australian Marriage Equality to chart whether attitudes have altered.
We have more public and parliamentary support than ever before, and that's because so many Australians have had the conversation about this reform and understand why it's important to so many couples and so many families from coast to coast.
Evan Wilson is Executive Director of the American group Freedom to Marry, and he says religious leaders should play no role in deciding the issue.
There are religious entities that are adamantly opposed, but there are also many people of faith and many leaders of faith and many congregations and churches that stand up for the golden rule of treating others as you would want to be treated, of separating what the government does from what the church does. No church should be telling the government who can get a civil or legal marriage license and have the same opportunities in a free society.
Why shouldn't religious leaders, Rabbi Jeffrey? I'm asking a little bit of a Dorothy Dixon.
We're obligated as religious leaders to share our opinions on these issues, and there will be those religious leaders who are absolutely opposed. I, on the other hand, and many of my colleagues have come out quite clearly. In fact, I've officiated at gay and lesbian commitment ceremonies.
How long for, by the way?
Just in the last few years. It took a long time for our movement to be able to come up to that.
You called it a commitment ceremony, not a marriage.
Only because we are licensed religious celebrants and therefore we cannot break the law of Australia. I would love the law of Australia to change so that we could call it a marriage. I believe it's a human rights issue for these gay and lesbian
Did you change your mind on this, or have you always?
I always understood intellectually the argument, but it took me, I'm actually embarrassed to say, some time to come across the line in terms of being able to be an advocate for this position. But now that I am, it ties in so perfectly with where I come as a religious leader, which is I absolutely believe in, let's call it God, as the source of conscious being and living, but I don't believe that any ultimate conscious being has ever authored a book. Those are all human constructs, and how we can allow a human construct to determine the human rights of people in the 21st century is puzzling to me. Yes, there are core principles in it of justice, of compassion, of every human being having equal dignity, and those are my motivating principles.
Prue, when you're around your electorate, do you have echoes of that divide between men and women? Really?
Totally, yes. Our women are much more supportive of gay marriage. I think men are more threatened by homosexuality generally, and I think that might be reflected in that poll. I personally think it is actually not a human rights issue, but a semantics issue. Marriage, historically, and by religious institutions, has been applied to marriage between a man and a woman, and I think we could very well establish a new institution with a new name that applies to a commitment between people of the same sex.
But I agree with your analysis.
Why are we playing with semantics?
With your conclusion.
I know, it's funny, isn't it? It's funny, it's because to me it's just semantics, and we all love language and we respect the importance of accuracy in meaning.
So you're saying that you do think that the word marriage does
means, yes,
between a man and a woman?
Yes, totally.
But so you'd ideally like something more that
yes, absolutely. I think it's...
You haven't got an idea of a word.
Well, I do lie in bed trying to think of one. I do, because I think it is... I mean, all the evidence suggests that they're more stable relationships, that they do have a great sense of commitment to each other, and they are perfectly entitled to want to express that. But my concerns are that the churches and religious institutions, and primarily, I mean, the state's only been involved in marriage for over 100 years or so, and it only became involved to protect children from being married to people who they shouldn't be married to, i.e. cousins or adults before they were ready. So the role of the state in marriage is actually quite limited, but it was traditionally a cultural and religious service, and that's why I think the churches and religious institutions should be entitled to decide what they think the word marriage means. When the churches and our religious institutions decide that marriage, they think, can be accommodated within their theology as meaning between people of the same sex, I think we go along with it.
Do you say this? Do you mount this argument to gay people?
Oh, yes, and they usually disagree with me.
But they would...
No, they want
strongly
the
would
word
disagree
marriage.
with you.
And I keep saying, I'm sorry, marriage has a meaning. I know the English language is very flexible. I know it changes all the time. Wonderful language. But I don't think we can support a change in a meaning just because a group of people wants to adopt a word. Why don't we have a new word? I'm sorry, it's just...
Scott.
I think it's pretty basic.
Is this a decent aspiration, like a rising above, a sort of social justice aspiration, or is it just that Prue can't come to terms with something that's...
I must say, on this panel, I probably find myself a bit closer to Prue than Rabbi Jeffrey. One of the things that I'm concerned about by the poll, just to sort of step back to that at the moment, is what that seems to demonstrate to me is that there are two levels of this argument. There's the visceral aspect of the argument. There's the kind of instinctive recoil that men are possibly a little bit more prone to than women. And then there's whatever other political, religious, moral rationale we might want to give that. So to my mind, the first warning bell is we must be careful to differentiate both aspects of this, the kind of instinctive, and I suppose I'm a little bit wary about automatically broad brushing that with homophobic. I'm not sure if there's a kind of instinctive reaction to something. I'm just not sure that we can vilify that in quite the way that we do. But I think more than this, I'm just not sure that we can do away or we can redefine marriage in the way that it's being played out, and I'm even less sure that this is in fact a human rights issue. There are institutions within our society that exist for the sake of other institutions, and I'm just not sure. I'm not saying I'm against gay marriage, but I don't think it's a human rights issue.
Because all the legal rights are well established.
Yes.
Access to superannuation. Access to
but I think
arrangements.
there is a movement within the Church of England at the moment. There's an argument in the Church of England which I think probably gets the balance about right. On the one hand, there's the need culturally, theologically, to preserve marriage as it exists, but then there's also a move to sacramentally recognize civil unions for gay people. Now, I think that is probably getting just about the closest. Yeah.
And I guess I just wonder what the ultimate issue is, if it's not visceral, against having absolute equal treatment, same word, same everything, especially given the past marriage was polygamy. We changed it for that.
All right.
Yes, well, that's the other reason why the state became involved. Yes, it's true.